Right, I'm thrilled to be here today. My name is Mohammed and I run the blog called Dental School Coach. Today I have an amazing guest with me. Um, Pretty much all I learned in my college and beyond, a lot of them are from her. And I want to introduce my friend Mariam Naeem, who is a recent Penn Dental graduate. And I want her to tell a bit about herself. But before doing that, I'm gonna, tell you who she really is. She's a top performer. In her junior and senior year, she had straight A's. And in the dental school, she did really well, graduating almost at the top of her class. When she graduated from the clinic, she had the most point. Is that right, Mariam?
Yeah, Mohammed's being really kind and generous over here. But yeah, I can tell you it was a lot of luck and it was a lot of hard work along the way. He makes it sound easy. It wasn't like that at all.
Awesome. Regardless of that, so Mariam, losing you for a bit. All right.
Yeah.
What's the secret to your success?
I can tell you there's many habits that I've had or inculcated over the years. It wasn't easy. I had an adjustment period from college, deciding to be a dentist, coming into dental school. So I can't pinpoint to one actual secret, if you want to say, but there have been different things that I've done along the way that I feel like have helped me get to my goals, whichever ones they are. And they're not just applicable to dentistry. I feel like they're the sort of things that can apply across the board to anything you want to do in life.
So tell a little bit about that, because what I perceive is that you are a master at prioritizing what you need to do, and that I felt that really helped you. I could be wrong, but tell us a bit about what are some of the habits that you accumulated that really helped you out.
Well, Mohammed, when I was in college, in undergraduate, for example, I noticed a lot of dental school pre-dental students around me who would take a lot of classes and would take a lot of classes across the board. They weren't really prioritizing what they wanted to do or what the goal was. So yeah, we're in college to learn. All of us are there for the same reason. I went to a pretty academically driven school. I went to UPenn. So everyone was trying to get the most out of their education over there and signing up for 5, 6 classes at a time. And now I started off being in this intense program called Vagilos, which had 50 or 60 students to begin with,
right,
but would only be left with 3 or 4 every year by the end of the 4 years. And they planned for that. So they built that in. They would invite 50 or 60 students every year and people would drop out along the way. A lot of my friends I saw resisted doing that because we don't want to come off as quitters. So once you're already in a program, once you're already taking an intense course load. For my program, for example, we were supposed to graduate with a double major and a master's in something and have research along the way. So it was a program geared to generating Nobel laureates. It was. And if you and your peers were doing it and everyone made it look easy, they were putting in the hours that they needed to put, but at what expense? So you got the exhilaration of doing something really difficult. But the day I decided to drop out of Vagilos was the best, smartest day of my life. I felt a weight lifted off of me. I was able to prioritize my career and able to look past that miss that you have in college, where you're thinking, I need to get through this. I can't quit. I can't quit. It's not about quitting. It's about prioritizing. So don't be afraid to reevaluate your activities and see which ones are actually helping you long term and which ones are just a short term ego boost. Like, honestly, at the end of the day, it was my ego that was holding me back from dropping the program. And once I did it, I soared.
I can totally relate because Penn has this show and tell culture, like where everyone is running off telling how many hours they've studied, and then how many classes they take. It's like a ego boosting thing. But at the end of the day, some people that aren't taking many classes, they end up as not being as successful as someone like you. So I can totally relate. When I was taking 5, 6 classes, as you mentioned, I ended up doing really bad. And once I figured out that I want to do dentistry, I just focused on one single goal and prioritized that over anything else.
Right, Mohammed, I think that's the key really to anyone's success. You have to find out what it is that you want and go with it with everything you have. You can't let your ego stand in the way. You can't let yourself stand in your way. And you definitely cannot let other people stand in your way.
Right.
So The other thing I noticed was people were always talking about what the newest, most interesting class was. And I remember wanting to take these classes. I remember wanting to take the Third Reich. I remember wanting to take sculpture and comparative literature and religious studies, because that's what I was here for. I was in college to learn. And what I realized is that's where you have to work smart, not hard.
Right.
Like, hard work is a virtue, obviously, but you really want to work smart. And the way to work smart is I figured out a major in my university that doubled as having the most requirements that dental school needed. So most of my prereqs were built into the requirements of my major. So I didn't need to take any extra classes for my major at all. All my extra classes were geared towards my interests. And even when I was taking interesting classes, I would do my homework beforehand and like talk to my network, talk to people, go research online at the Penn course review, and make sure that the amount of time needed for those classes was within the amount of time that I could provide.
Cool. One thing you just mentioned was pretty interesting. You talk to people. How did you do that?
So I think people are going to be your most important resource from the moment you start college till for the rest of your life as a dentist.
Yeah.
Dentistry is all about building relationships. It's about building a network. It's about fostering that relationship with your patient, relationships with your team, your hygienist. You're going to be a leader. With your peers, they're going to refer cases to you. You're not an island. So I think you start developing those skills earlier on in college, where you, before you make a decision, you find someone who's already in the business. And I think in terms of college education, before you sign up for a class, you find 2 or 3 people who've also taken that class. And it's really important not to take other people's opinions for face value, which is why I always had at least 2 or 3 people. And I would profile them like, oh, Muhammad was a really hard worker and loved this class. It must require a lot of work, but it will probably be rewarding. Versus another one of my friends who I know is pre-med, for example, and only taking easy A's, and she recommends a class. Her motivation for recommending a class would just be it required no work. It was an easy A class. It might not be the most fulfilling, but it'll get you a good grade. So you have to take information in and you have to synthesize it and form your own opinion. Like, you have to find the balance between not too much work, easy enough, but still fulfilling and intellectually stimulating.
Perfect. That really reminds me of the time when I was in college. And the funny thing is, you need to know people. Like, you can't be just a social isolated bee and not just study. You have to like go out and hang out with those people that will really help you at the end of the day. And as you mentioned, dentistry is just a profession of communication, a profession where you are supposed to be empathizing with people and making friends with your patients. I think it's really important that you start building that habit early on.
Exactly. I think, and there's interviews also, people will tell you how to act nice, and then there's actually being nice. And I think in order to actually be nice, you have to build your repertoire of skills from the earliest possible point. You're talking to people and you're trying to be a good person simply for the sake of it. You can't think of people as commodities. You're not using them. You're literally genuinely interested in talking to them. And you'll find that when you do that, a lot of people will want to help you. So if you try to be friendly, talk to someone, show interest in their lives, and then ask their opinion on something, they're going to give you a true, honest to God opinion. And this, in particular, to people who go to gunner schools like Hopkins or Harvard or Penn, this applies even to these schools, despite the fact that the reputation is, oh, everyone's out to get everyone else. It's such a toxic environment. People are trying to shoot each other down. If you literally genuinely show interest in their opinion, they will help you out.
Yeah, I remember one of my classmates who was really competitive, didn't want to help out anyone. But I got to go to his church one time just by being really curious about him, and started talking about his life, and he opened up to me so much that I could not have expected otherwise. So it's really important that you become genuine with other people.
Yeah, I think you're the most scarce but also the most valuable virtue that will carry on for the rest of your life as a dentist.
All right, so let's move on to something that's everyone is looking for: how to become the ideal dental school candidate.
Okay, so I mean, as you know, there's a lot of facets. You have to have your dental school application thoroughly done. You have to have a great DAT score. You have to have a good GPA, which is something you're working towards your whole undergraduate career. And you have to ace the interview. And all these steps together will get you into dental school.
Okay. A lot of people are struggling to find the perfect school for them. How did you make the school list? Especially it was difficult for you because you're used to be an international student. And so I assume it was much more difficult than other people. Tell us a bit about how you selected the schools that you did.
So I think the most important thing to do when you're starting this process is to be very, very organized. And when I say that, I mean you have to break it down into chunks. So the first chunk of applying to dental school in order to be the perfect candidate comes when you're an undergraduate. And a lot of things are under your control. It's under your control to do research. It is under your control to do community service. It is under your control to explore your passions like sculpture, or art, or painting. And you'll find a lot of dental students are artistically inclined. A lot of dentists out there are artistically inclined. So you want to start tailoring your undergraduate education to becoming the perfect dental school candidate. So you can put all of that onto your application. That's not the only reason, of course, but that's one of the main reasons. Like, that's the most key phase where you start shadowing dentists. You start going to your local dental schools. You start getting a feel for how the profession works. If someone in your family is a dentist, you're right. It was a little bit harder for me because no one in my family was a dentist and I was coming from a different country. But if someone in your family is a dentist, use that resource. Go to their practice, see what it's about, start learning. So you've already started formulating your dental career in your undergraduate years. Your first 3 years, freshman, sophomore, and junior year, are where you're going from community service, research, shadowing. These are the 3 things you should be focusing on while keeping your GPA up. Then comes the next phase, when you start to have to write a killer personal statement. That personal statement is supposed to encompass you as an individual of society, you as a dentist, you as a great friend, an empathetic person that people like.
Yes.
All of those things need to be in your personal statement. With your GPA really good, all the stuff that you've done over the past 3 years needs to be touched upon your personal statement. Everything that has helped you grow in some way or the other. The research that you did, that shadowing that you did. If you were pre-med at one point, why you decided to stop being pre-med and come over to the dental side, what it was that changed your mind. All of that stuff that resonates with the admissions committee needs to be in your personal statement. It needs to be a summary of your last 3 years. The most important thing to remember here is you're not applying to college. It's not about, I was once upon a time and my grandmother said this and I was a little kid, I used to play with toy cars, which is why I want to be an engineer. It cannot be about that. This is about how you've grown through college. You went to college for 4 years. You've changed since. If you're talking about what you were at, how life was when you were 7, that's saying to me, as someone reading your personal statement, that you haven't really grown that much. That said, your core values are going to be same, and I always recommend finding a unifying theme that identifies you as a personality to tie together all the different facets of growth of your personal statement. So we've talked about 2 things right now. We've talked about what to do in undergrad, and we've talked about how to write your personal statement. The third and most important thing is acing the DAT. You have got to ace the DAT. You took that bad class in college, you made a bad decision at some point, or you just had that rough semester and your GPA tanked. There's one thing that can compensate for your GPA like none other, and that's your DAT. The DAT score, every point on the DAT score will compensate for 0.2 on your GPA. Yes. So the difference between a 3.8 and a 3.6 is just the difference between a 22 and a 23 on the DAT. So
let's go really deep into the DAT. I know that most people use the same materials that everyone is using. Most of the recommendations are use Chad's videos, or use Destroyers, use Achiever or TopScore. Nowadays people are using DAT Bootcamp, and some people get 17 and some people get 25, right? And I know personally knowing you that I know that you got a 25 in your DAT. Tell us a bit about what you did differently.
So you're right. So it's not just about the resources themselves, it's about how you use them. And this is where I'm talking about studying smart, not hard again. I know people who studied for the DAT for a really long time, 3 months, 4 months, they stretched it over a long period of time. I was one of those people who compacted it into a month intense studying. So it really does depend on knowing your style, your study style. So the most key thing over here, and your personal statement will help you realize this, and your years in college will help you realize this, is figure out how you study. If you're the kind of person who likes to take bite-sized amounts and do a little bit every day, then do that. Plan out a 3-month DAT study plan. If you're the kind of person who waits till the last minute and needs to cram, give yourself 3 weeks. If you need to change your date after the 3 weeks are up, you need to create that sense of urgency, do it. 3 days before the DAT, you're going to feel like you're not ready, but you've given it 100%, move your date a week out. At that point, don't nickel and dime it. This is the rest of your future on the line. So don't be like, oh, the $25. Don't even think about that. Find your motivation style and capitalize on that. So that's one thing I did. I did the condensed studying and actually moved my date a week ahead because that created the sense like, oh my God, my DAT is in a week. I need to wing a 21, but do I want a 21 or do I want to go above and beyond? I want to be perfect. I want to be thoroughly prepared. So I got myself another week. And that last week or last 2 weeks that you buy yourself by getting an extension are the most productive because now you know your weaknesses.
Okay.
So that's one thing I did. I figured out my study style and I planned a schedule based on that.
And when did you figure out a study schedule? Was it done before DAT or was it done before, like, let's say a semester, or when did you actually figure that out?
Well, so I think you can figure it out at any point before the DAT. Most of us should try going through college and being in this academic environment. We should try to know ourselves in that way and know how we study. So I knew that I like the stress or I like the accountability that comes with a test. So I knew that for a year before I took the DAT. So which is why I planned my DAT so it was a month before.
Right.
A lot of people I know, however, were doing a part-time job at night and taking summer classes and studying for the DAT. So if you're taking summer classes and studying for the DAT, I recommend at least 2 to 3 months.
Yeah. So for example, I had only 20 days for my DAT, and then in that 25 days when I was studying for it, I was doing another project that I was really interested in. I got a $5,000 grant for it, and I was gonna go to India. I packed so many things together, and what ended up happening was that I had to retake the DAT because I didn't do as well. So what would have been smart was to figure out that I don't have enough time and just say no to one of the programs that I got. But the other thing was that the money was important because that's how I financed my dental school application. So it was a blessing in disguise, but I really had to, I had to take the DAT again, and I paid for it, and my score jumped a lot. So,
well, it's good that it all worked out, but this brings us back to our first point: the ego,
right.
the ego and the need to do more. And I think that's very common in Penn, and it's a very common personality type in type A's. You want to do it all. You want to take it all on your plate. You don't want to say no to opportunities, and so you have to realize where your limit is, though. And if you're doing that, then give yourself more time. You're not nobody is superhuman. We
right.
all have our limitations. So we should recognize what it is. And you're right. The money was helpful, and it ended up working out okay. And sometimes it does, but sometimes it doesn't. Which is why, just as a rule, I think we should know when to start saying no, like you said.
Right.
Sorry. Going back to the DAT. One of the things was knowing how to study, like planning out your schedule. The other thing, using the same resources, CHADS, DAT Bootcamp, Achiever, Top Score, there's ways to use them. So I can buy all the resources out there on the internet, but if I don't know how to use them, I'm wasting them. I'm literally just throwing my money away. And that's the other important thing. You need to hire a coach or hire someone who knows. You don't have to hire someone, have friends who've done it, but make sure that they know what they're talking about and ask them how to use the resources. Like the way I used CHAD was very different from the way my friend used CHAD. We used it for the exact same amount of time, but I think after 7 days of me on CHAD versus 7 days of her on CHAD, I knew everything there was to know about general chemistry and organic chemistry. And she only sort of knew. She was like, I hope the questions are exactly the same questions that CHAD checked went over. So that comes with going in depth of the material without getting lost in the breadth of it. And I
Yeah.
think that's where a dental school coach would help, actually, which is why I think this is a great thing that you're doing.
And the interesting thing is you actually helped me create my own schedule. And you knew that my schedule is packed, so you really helped me narrow it down to like only focus on the things that matter.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You have to narrow it down to the things that matter when it comes to that last minute studying. So I guess that's the skill I have from my last minute stressful style
Right.
of studying.
And even now, like I talked to a student a couple of days ago, and she mentioned that she used all the materials, but 7 days before the exam, she did not review any of them. She was just really stressed out. She was discouraged because of the score not being improved by so much work, putting on so much hard work. She just had she almost cried. Said I'm taking it third time now and I'm still not improving. And I suggested that only use some resources. She was using 7-8 different resources that you don't really need to use. You can only use 2 or 3 resources and really use them well.
You brought on an excellent point, Mohammed. I'm going to tell you something that is really useful for people to know. And I think you might know this, and why this can capitalize on this. Not only should you have a few resources, you need to figure out the human psyche and know that you're not above it and pace out your motivation like that. Use yourself as a psychological subject. Know that achiever is always going to give you a 17 or an 18 on the DAT and break your spirit. So don't schedule achiever a day before your exam and go into the exam being crushed. Schedule something that you know you're going to score higher on because of the way the exam is structured. DAT achiever, better earlier on when you're trying to motivate yourself and you're hitting that slump in your studying where you feel like you don't really need to study that much. You sort of know most of everything. Take an achiever test. Boom. I'm actually not as prepared as I thought. And you start studying again. But towards the end of it, take top scorer. Top scorer will help you get inflated scores like 22, 23. Top score will bolster your confidence because the day you're going into your exam and the week before then, it is all confidence. It is not material. You're not acquiring new information in those 7 days before your test. You're literally galvanizing the confidence with which you take the test and how relaxed you're going to be during the test itself.
Exactly. I recommend that just use fewer materials and use them smartly.
Exactly. Right. So that's just one of the many tips I think people need to understand when taking the DAT. There's a whole host of other ones, but whoever's listening to this, please start using this.
Tell us one more ways that you used to study differently for the DAT that helped you out.
I think the most important thing when studying for the DAT is to be organized. And by being organized, I mean you have to, I don't want to give away everything right now, but I do think that you have to prioritize and pace out yourself. So if you're doing bio for 4 days, you're going to burn out of bio. So make sure you're following bio with like PAT. You're following PAT with math. And the way I did this was there were things that I did every single day. Things that you need to do every single day in order to do well on the DAT. You need to do math every single day. You need to do reading every single day. You need to look at a PAT spatial skill thing every single day. Not the same section. You don't have to do keyholes every day, but do keyholes one day, do hole punching another day, do pattern folding a third day. So pace yourself out every single day by doing English, quantitative reasoning, and PAT. Those are the 3 things that you will be doing every single day. On top of that, go through bio, gen chem, and organic chemistry. 4 days of bio. Take a break from bio. Give yourself a bite-sized amount. 4 days of gen chem. Take a break from gen chem. 4 days of orgo and cycle right back. Back to bio, back to gen chem, back to orgo. Because that's how the cycles of memory work. You want to consolidate. You want to acquire new information. You want to consolidate that information. And the best way to consolidate is quizzes. So you do 4 days of bio, but the 4th day is really just reminding yourself of information from day 1, 2, and 3. It's all about the recall. They've done studies that show if you recall information, it consolidates it in your mind forever versus I could repeat the same information over and over again for twice as long and not remember it for as long in my life. So it's all about consolidating that information, especially for biology.
Makes sense. So just pace it out and be really systematic and organized about your schedule during the DAT, during the DAT time. All right, let's jump ship and move on to the next topic, interviewing. Many of the students are going to be interviewing starting from August until, let's say, March. And some of them, some of the people are really freaking out about what questions are going to be asked, what sort of resources are there. I want this interview to be really extensive about interview because I want to help people. And as you know, dental school coach is all about really passionately helping people to get into dental school, their dream dental school. So let's get right in. How did you prepare for your interview? Mariam, like I have some questions listed out that we can go over, but I want to understand your perspective of interviewing. I was really bad at interviewing, and then I thought that I would really do terrible at it. But you actually told me no. You said, Mohammed, you'll be fine. You just have to practice. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think the biggest myth about interviews out there is people think you're either a good interviewer or you're not. And I think that's not true at all. I think you can be taught to be a good interviewer. It's a skill that can be picked up, and it's a skill that only gets better with practice. As far as dental school interviews go, the most important thing to realize is dental school is a very conservative school. So everything from the moment you step in through those doors, what you're wearing, how you're looking and presenting yourself, your demeanor, and how genuine you are to the people you interact with, not just the interviewer, but the other interviewees, the peers all around you, the staff, the security guard at the front, all of that is adding to how you're going to be perceived on the day of your interview and how your interview is going to go, because it's going to determine your mood. So once again, it's very important to be aware of yourself and know what your mood is going to be. You cannot go in there with sweaty palms, shaking, thinking you're being interrogated. It is not an interrogation. You have to understand the psychology of the interviewer. They want to get to know you. They do not want to intimidate you. They literally just want to know if you're the kind of person that they would like to be stuck with for the next 4 years in their school, because you're going to work together.
Right. And the most important thing is that, getting to know people during the interview is it gives you a huge advantage over other people. Like, for example, the security guard, let's say you are stuck in the lab while you're in that dental school, and you don't know anyone, but the security guard knows you, so he lets you in or he lets you out. Something like that. It always helps you out at the end.
Exactly. You never know who is going to come in useful at what stage in life, which is why my personal philosophy is just to be very nice and friendly to everyone. You're looking to make friends. You're not looking to make enemies. No one is.
Right. Go ahead.
So my other thing about interviews was going off of what you said. Not only do they help you later in life, but they help you on the day of. You just made a friend. So even though you can't bring your friends from back home with you can't bring your college friends in your pocket, you can become friends at the interview. So when you're really freaking out and you're up next and all these questions are running through your mind, talking to your new friend is going to ease your nerves. Just within the short term too, it's helping you. It's helping you become more relaxed as an individual. It's getting your vocal cords all lubricated and ready to start talking. It's giving you things to talk about, discussing current affairs. It's opening you up a little bit. And interviewers see that. They see that you're relaxed and you're friendly and you seem like you fit in. And what they always say, dress for the job you want, not the one you have. If you look like and you're dressed and acting and talking like you already go to school there, you're going to go to school there. If you see it and you embody it, the interviewer is going to see it. Oh, this girl looks like she belongs at Penn. She looks like she really belongs here. How could I not take her?
Right. You bring up a really interesting point. You know why? Because you said dress like or act like you're already in this school. And
Exactly.
that's a really valid point because, Penn was my home school for undergrad. I knew most of the dental students, or at least I knew a bunch that I could always look at and smile during the interview. That really helped me. I didn't know as many people in, let's say, UCSF or Pittsburgh. So what I did was basically reach out to students there who already, I found them through, let's say, LinkedIn or from some clubs that I was really interested in dental school. And I reached out to them and said, hey, I'm going to be interviewing there. I wanted to chat with you for 10-15 minutes if you could help me out, right? That was a really good way of getting to know people that you're not attending an undergraduate school of. I think thinking that you're already in that school really helps you out because it puts you in the mindset that this is just a formality for me. I'm already in the school and this is just a formality. I think a lot of the students don't have that mentality. They're going into the interview scared. They're thinking, oh, am I going to get in? Or what am I going to respond when the interviewers, throw some curveball at me? Having that edge over other people really makes you comfortable and less stressful during the interview.
That's excellent. In fact, that's exactly what I was saying. In fact, it makes you more likable too.
Right.
It makes you seem like you belong there. Like the funniest thing with me, and I do this all the time, I go to different cities, and I guess it's the way I'm hanging out or the way I'm standing, but I always look like a local. Like people will come up to me and ask for directions in San Francisco or New York, and I don't even live there, or DC or Philly, and I'm just like, I'm not exactly a local, but I could look it up for you on the phone. So you should always just have this aura about you that you just look like a local. Like if you were in scrubs, you should look like you go there. But the fact that you're dressed nicely is the only tell that you're not a student at that school.
Yep, agreed. All right, so let's go into some technical questions. I call this this is an interesting question. How to answer some of the toughest questions, even though you're not prepared for those questions, you don't know that answers really offhand. Like, how do you prepare for them?
So I can tell you from my experience just a few of the questions that I was asked in dental school itself, and then we can go off of that. But the most important thing, and I want you to remember this, is they're trying to get to know you as a person. And if you can do one of two things, if you can make your interviewer either laugh or cry, you're in.
I definitely agree with that. I remember the NYU interviewer. She read my disadvantaged statement and she was crying. I saw tears in her eyes. I immediately knew that I was in. So that's a good advice.
Exactly. So if you can make them cry or laugh, you're in. Now, my personal statement, disadvantage essay you brought up, but I'm sure when we talk about the personal statement, we covered that.
Yeah.
But my personal statement wasn't the happiest. It wasn't the easiest ride. It was kind of dark. But my interview was a whole different vein altogether. We talked about anthropology, archaeology, manual dexterity, how girls do their eyebrows, makeup. And this was like a girl on girl interview, but she laughed about it. My interviewer, Dr. Sheridan, laughed. And the way she was laughing, I felt like we were friends and that I belonged. And then how could she not take her friend? Right. Why would she not want me there? So that's one strategy. Another strategy, my friend who also got into dental school with me told me about, she was crying. He told her about how he supported his family single-handedly. He had to get a job through college to pay for his sister's education and for his mother and for food, put food on the table. And she cried and cried. And he obviously got in, since we ended up in dental school together.
Awesome.
So it really is about inciting a strong emotional response, because the way human beings connect to each other is when emotions are something that are universal. So you feel happy, I feel happy. It's not related to the color of our skin or what we do. And if you can incite that emotional response in someone, you're automatically into their heart.
Some of the dental school interviews, they're different style. Let's say open book, closed book. And it's really hard, when the interviewer is not, do not know about you. Do you have any tips like how to immediately be likable to them, how to immediately attract their attention and create emotional responses out of them?
So I'm going to say this from my own experience, but having talked to other people and advised them about this, I know this is different for everyone. So what I personally do is I walk into a room and I have the biggest smile on my face. Like,
smiling
hey,
is what helps.
I am so happy to see you. This is great. I am so excited to be here. And the reason I do that, but again, I know I'm just a smiley person in general, and a lot of people worry about not being taken seriously if they're smiling too much. I agree. So what you want to do is you want to avoid giggling and you want to just smile. A smile is professional. Giggling is what girls do in a gaggle. So that's not what you want to do. So that's one thing. Smiling always helps, straight up from the beginning. A strong handshake is the second thing. You want to give 2 pumps, and you don't want to, as a guy, you don't want to squeeze it too tight. As a girl, you don't want it to lay there like a plump fish. Exactly. You want to have a strong handshake and 2 pumps. That's the most professional way to do it. When you want to sit down, always maintain eye contact. and delve a little bit into small talk, because small talk, before you get into the big talk and the big emotional responses, you have to do small talk and you have to establish common ground, because that's how people connect to each other. So what
Right.
I do is I will scan my interviewer or my patient or whoever it is, and I will try to find something that they care about. This applies to interviewers, patients, friends, everyone. I will try to find something that they care about. Let's talk about that. And then you take the spotlight off of it being an interview of you onto an interview of them. They are telling you about their school. They're telling you about their life. They're telling you about their childhood and about their college career and about their dental school years. And once people start talking about themselves, they love talking about themselves. You've already won them over.
Yeah.
And that's when you can relate your stories. When you hear something that you can add to, you can be like, oh, that's how you learned how to ride a bike? I actually ride bikes too. Or did you, like, I didn't know you were into football. Did you see the game last night? And that's how the conversation flows. So I think the key is to keep it as conversational as possible. So you're making it awkward for them to bring up those really tough questions. Like, so where do you see yourself in 5 years? Or so tell me about your weaknesses. Once you get into a flow conversation, it's hard to break out of it and go back to a technical script that they're supposed to follow.
Right. And by the end of the conversation, the time is over and it's the time to go. So you're done pretty much. It guarantees that you're in. So that's awesome advice. I listened to an advice from a management consultant, and since we have a lot of management consultant friends, I could tell you a lot about them. One of them, he was showing interview practice, and he said, "I'm thrilled to be here," and that sentence kind of like put the interviewer at ease, and seeing that this person is really excited to be here. Yeah, and smiling.
That's true.
Yeah.
You want to be smiling and you want to show excitement by saying you're thrilled to be there, because what's better than being thrilled? The other thing I will say, technically, it is a dental school interview, so one question you're never going to avoid, and you don't want to avoid, is why do you want to be a dentist? And I can give you the formula right now in terms of what the standard responses are. If you guys hit all of these, that's the right answer. People always wonder. I always have people coming up to me that I tutor, like, what do I say? Like, why do I want to be a dentist? You know why you want to be a dentist. That's why you're applying to dental school. But when someone puts you on the spot like that and asks you why you want to be a dentist, suddenly your mind draws a blank. So think about these common themes about dentists. Do you like working with your hands? Do you like science? Do you like people? Do you like teeth and smiles and expressions? Do you like to read people? All of these reasons are excellent reasons to want to be a dentist. All of us know, people who are in the field, we're in it for the work-life balance too. So you have to show that part of your personality. You can't be a super gunner. You might be going into oral surgery maybe one day, and perhaps that is the lifestyle you want to pursue. But most of us want to be dentists for the work-life balance. So it's not taboo to say that. You can add it at the end. But the main reasons that you want to be a dentist, probably working with your hands, being into art, being into science, and working on people. These are the 4 main facets of being a dentist. So if these 4 appeal to you, or any of these appeal to you, talk about it.
Awesome. Some of the other interview questions that are very common is like, tell us a bit about yourself, or tell me a bit about yourself. How would you go answer that?
So tell me a bit about yourself is a tricky one, because you always wonder whether you want to start from the latest to the earliest or the earliest to the latest. Now, in the personal statement, we talked about how you want to start. It's not a college personal statement, so you want to highlight your achievements of the past few years. And tell me a little bit about yourself. You're allowed to go all the way back. You can start from, I was born in this country, and this is how I was raised, and I always had these siblings, and this is where I fell in the birth order, and it framed my personality in this way, and I have all these friends, and I've traveled to all these places, and this is what I value in life. And when you talk about that stuff, they're already getting a feel of who you are as a person and what your personality is like. So the next question from that is going to be probably a follow-up of these questions, which is why tell me a little bit about yourself is a great question is your opportunity to tailor your own interview. Whatever you tell them about yourself, they're going to go off of. So if the guy sitting in front of me, if the person interviewing me looks like a tennis fan, then I'm not going to make this up. This is a facet of my personality. We have so much to tell about ourselves. We are such rich people, and we've lived 21, 22, 23 years by the time we're applying to dental school. So there's a million things we could tell about ourselves. So the skill comes from identifying what the other person could latch onto, because the reason they ask that question is to segue into something else. So see what they're comfortable segueing into. Do they have gators all over? When I interviewed at Florida, there was like college football pictures everywhere. And I'm not the most diehard college football fan, but I can talk about it.
Yep.
I know about it. So when he said, "Tell me about yourself," I would never say this to anyone else, but I casually mentioned that I was a University of Michigan Wolverines college football fan. And that resulted in a very impassioned conversation from him. So
That's so interesting. One thing that one of my friend did was she looked up the interviewer ahead of time. Nowadays everyone has a cell phone and you could Google anyone. Because she knew ahead of time who is going to be her interviewer on the interview day, so she had, let's say, half an hour, and she looked up what kind of work she does. So if she's a general dentist, or if she does research, and she connected through that researching experience. So that's an easy way of like connecting with people if you don't have many other ways, or if you feel that you're awkward talking about football, because many people don't feel comfortable talking about football all the time.
No, exactly. That's an excellent point. That's what I meant. Like, football was just an example.
Yes.
But if you know what your interviewer is into, then you can tailor your own answer of "tell me about yourself" to the things that you think they want to hear to some extent, or can talk about. Because you're not just trying to put yourself at ease, you're trying to put them at ease. You're trying to create a relaxed, friendly environment.
Right.
Exactly.
All right. So let's talk about the hardest of all questions. What's your weaknesses?
Ooh, that is the trickiest question. What are your weaknesses? So everyone will take a moment and like think about all their weaknesses, and the more egotistical ones of us are actually thinking, "I have no weaknesses," which just shows a level of arrogance, and perhaps there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance, I feel like. And I think I've heard people say, "I have no weaknesses." That is not the right answer. And then I've heard people spill out their guts pretending that their interviewer is their therapist and actually talking about their weaknesses. That is also not the way to go. Your interviewer is not your therapist. He is not there to talk about the fact that you are always late, or the fact that you just don't find joy in things and are actually depressed. These are not okay things to talk about. You want to come up with a weakness that can actually be viewed as a strength. You want to come up with something like, obviously you have to be truthful. So that's the most important thing throughout the interview. You're not making anything up. You're just selecting what information to share.
Right.
So like your personal weakness, I feel like, from everything we've talked about, is you take on too much on your plate. You don't really say no as much, right? You want to take that $5,000 project and do the DAT and apply to dental schools. That's a great weakness to have. That shows you're driven and ambitious. That's a great weakness to talk about. But the most important thing is, if you can't come up with a weakness that doubles as a strength, then talk about what you're doing to overcome it in the same breath. So you can admit to pretty bad things also, as long as you're saying, "and this is what I'm doing to overcome them." So I take too much on my plate, for example, is a great one. Let's see. Something about I am too helpful to my friends and sometimes don't prioritize myself as much. However, I have since joined the gym and made it a priority to go there, and I always wake up an hour earlier to take an hour to meditate. And this is what I'm doing to overcome the fact that I'm so socially overwhelmed all the time. That's a great way to answer that question. So you touch upon the weakness and then really delve into what you're doing to improve. So that again creates a positive impression of the whole thing. And
they would like to see that you're improving. They don't like to see they don't like to hear things such as character flaws, or things that you do that are negative, such as "I'm drug addict" or something. They want to hear something that maybe true for human being, universally true for human being, and a lot of people are bad at them, but you're doing something actively to figure it out and help make yourself better. Because at the end of the day, you're going to graduate school because you want to improve yourself, you want to improve your skills, and you want to connect with people. So I think that's a great response, Mariam. Thanks. let's talk. This is not going to be much technical. The questions we're going to go into are bit. They have a lot of psychology in them. They have some philosophical construction in them. But what is the next set of questions are a bit about abstract. So let's say, a lot of the people that I talk to over the phone as a dental school coach, I hear that I'm gonna be interviewing, but I don't want to sound as a fake. And most people say that you should fake it till you make it. But how do you really be yourself? How do you truly become yourself during an interview?
I think there is a difference between faking it and being genuinely nice. And I think that is why I keep emphasizing on trying to be a good person in general, because that will show through. So you're not actively trying to be mean to people,
right?
But you are trying to be agreeable. You're trying to find common ground of interest. You're smiling a lot. The body language that you've given, the body language speaks volumes. If you're just smiling the whole time, and I have had patients come up to me and tell me this. I've inherited patients from other dental students and have them complain about the fact that their dental student was really fake and didn't give it to them honestly. Like, they appreciate honesty. And I think your interviewer would also like some honesty. So if you're trying to portray yourself as this perfect candidate, this perfect straight A, never suffered in college, the perfect person, your interviewer is going to know something is up. We're all people. So what you want to do is you want to pepper it with reality. You want to talk about the hardships that you faced and overcame. I think one of the best things to talk about is how you overcome adversity. Because that shows that life wasn't always this easy for you. You made it here despite many things, and you're capable of growth. Right. So that's one thing. Then on top of that, if you have a smiling disposition, that just shows that you're an optimistic person. However, if you're someone who's always like, oh, I was born into this privilege, and this goes for people who are privileged also. You might have been born into privilege, but that you have your struggles of your own. Just because you're born into what is technically perceived as privilege does not mean that you did not have to struggle or strive at all. So do not downplay the hardness or the obstacles that you had to overcome. Embrace them and talk about how it was difficult, but you did it. And do talk about how it was difficult. The most important thing is taking ownership of everything and being responsible for everything that you've done. And once you do that, it's impossible to come off as fake.
That's an awesome response. Like sometimes students say, I'm coming across as fake, I don't want to do that. But the real issue is that they perceive themselves as someone who is not capable of doing those things, like becoming a social person or becoming someone who can talk really, in a well manner. So it takes practice. Sometimes, in one of the studies, they found that people that are more socially adept, they had more social interactions. So if you have more social interactions, you'll do better in the interview. And one of the quickest way to do it is utilizing the people that are paid to interact with you, such as the Starbucks barista or people at your school, the security guard. Just be nice to them and talk to them for 5-6 minutes. Take the time out and show them that you're genuinely interested in their life, and learn about them. And through that practice and practice, you'll become better at becoming yourself, becoming truly yourself.
Not only that, I think that's a great point that you brought up, but also recording yourself. Not only are, like you said, most people who are better socially have more social interactions, but a lot of people who don't pick up on social cues are oblivious to the fact that they're not picking up on it. That's why they're like that. So if you record yourself and look at yourself, or if you record yourself and show an interview to your friends, if you're nervous, some real friends who are going to give it to you bluntly, they're not going to sugarcoat it, and ask them for their honest and true opinion, they're going to tell you, oh, you always do that thing, and it's really awkward when you scratch your head, and people, it gives like a weird, confusing vibe. Like, you could be saying something really insightful, but it's really distracting because the whole time you're just scratching yourself. Don't do it. When someone tells you, you're going to stop doing it. I don't know, I might be scratching myself all the time, but because I'm not aware of it, I'm not going to change it. Someone else might, dart their gaze a lot, like be very distracted, or look down at their phone a lot when they're interacting with people. Once you start recording yourself or just being very aware of how it is that you're being perceived, you're going to start to change that. That's the only way. Like, unless you know you have a problem, you're not going to change the problem. So the
Right.
biggest thing for me is find venues to identify how you're coming off as.
Yeah, I totally agree. And video yourself, like that really helped me out when I was applying to dental school and doing the interviews. For example, one thing was I, I what is it? I rambled a lot. Without knowing that, I would just ramble on, and it could be, those people off, make people zone off, zone out. So one thing I realized is that if you're becoming aware of what you do and how you talk to other people, that really helps you out to figure out a way to change what you're doing right now. So the way that I stopped rambling was just to video myself, and then slowly, whenever I'm finding myself ramble and I looked at the other people, seeing that they're dozing off, I would just like stop myself, shut myself down, and said, okay, let me get to the point, and just said this.
And that's another great point that you brought up, that you looked at other people dozing off. So not only is it important to be aware of what it is that you're doing and ask for feedback, or record yourself and look at yourself and study your actions, but also study the other person. Looking for their feedback is key. If the person's dozing off, you're going to ask yourself what's going on. If everyone is looking at their phones every time you're hanging up, every time you're talking and you look around the table and everyone's on their phones, that's a bad sign. Or if you're talking and you see people exchanging looks, or if you're talking and you keep looking you see someone darting to one side of your body, for example. Like, I was in an interview recently for a job, and I noticed that my interviewer kept looking at my left ear. Like, she was great, we were very friendly, but she kept looking at my left ear, and I wondered what was going on. And so I just casually touched my left ear, and I realized I was only wearing, one of my earrings had fallen out. And she was so distracted by that fact that she kept darting her gaze to my left ear. So it's good to be aware of that stuff. Obviously, look at yourself in the mirror before you go for an interview, but be very attuned to the cues of your interviewers.
Right. So let's discuss something that a lot of people would ask us: how to build an unshakable confidence in yourself without coming across as arrogant. And we slightly touched that before, but I wanna go deep into it. A lot of people would say, I don't want to come across as arrogant. I want to be confident, because if you're not confident, dental school would not pick you as a future dental student. How do you reconcile between being confident but not coming across as arrogant?
I think the most important balance is something we've already talked about twice, is a lot of us have accomplished a lot of things, which is why we are at this stage where we're applying to dental school. Mm-hmm. You can talk about your accomplishments, or you can talk about your accomplishments in light of the hardships that you've faced. So I could choose to focus on the fact that, oh, I was in this bachelor's program, or, oh, I had all these points, or, dental school was just, I had this 4.0 first 2 years. Like, I didn't.
And you'll find that many students in the interview, they would say that, oh, I had a 4.0 straight throughout my school. I'm like, okay, so what? Right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you could talk about that, but if you want to just drop it into what you're talking about, you could talk about, it was really difficult for me to maintain a high GPA, and this is what I started doing differently, which helped me get to a 4.0 from a 3.8. Or, oh, I have a 26 on the DAT, instead of just saying, yeah, I aced the DAT, I did really well on the DAT. You could talk about, I didn't have the best GPA. They already know that. So you can acknowledge these things and own it. I didn't have the best GPA, which is why it was so important for me to do well on the DAT. And I really learned these things about myself as I was studying for the DAT. So as long as you acknowledge the journey and the struggle that came before the accomplishment, it makes the accomplishment more modest, or it humbles the accomplishment. The accomplishment is there's nothing less to it. A 4.0 is still a 4.0. A great prestigious program. Points in clinic are points in clinic. But the way you talk about them humble the entire thing. So you come off as a little more humble. You want to come off as confident and humble. Unaccomplished people are not humble. Humility is a factor of the successful. It's hard to be humble when you have nothing or you've accomplished nothing. You're not being humble. You're just being shady or you're trying to avoid talking about things. But being humble is a skill that you pick up over time. And that's something I think is very important. So talk about your accomplishments, talk about your struggles, but do it in a humble way. So in a way that other people can relate to.
Right.
Like, oh, don't worry, I used to be like you too, but then I did these things differently and I saw results.
Exactly. And the funny thing is, we feel that a lot of the successful people are arrogant, but they're not. They're very humble. In one of the books that I read, Good to Great, it's one of the best business book out there. Jim Collins, he researched 500 Fortune 500 to Fortune 500 CEOs, and he found that the two most important characteristics they had was they're really thoughtful and they're humble. Like they're basically the top of their company, the top of the game, but they're still humble about it. And humble people are liked more in the job field, in the school, even in dental school. People don't like arrogant people in general.
That's true. But I will put a caveat here. So you said you want to still be confident. So when it comes time to your work, that is not the time to be humble. So if you know you do a good job, if you know you're like a good dentist or you're very good with your hands, talk about it. But don't talk about it as if I'm really good with my hands. You can talk about it like, I enjoy working with my hands. I built really great things and I love looking at that stuff. So that way you're talking about pursuing a passion, overcoming. So you basically have to soften the blow in some way. Like you either talk about your interest and passions, or you talk about how hard it was to get to where you are and like the things you've learned along the way and how it wasn't always that easy and how a lot of it was luck also, but also talk about, but I know my work is good. And because of all these things, hardships and this passion and interest I had in this thing, now I'm good. And I think that's helped me a lot. Every time I talk about this stuff, fortunately, I have accomplished a lot of things, but I always talk about now I'm at this stage. I wasn't always there. I wasn't born with a silver spoon in my mouth. And I think that is the difference between confidence and arrogance.
Awesome. So let's jump to one of the last questions about interviewing. Then we're going to go into post-interview. What questions should the applicant ask during an interview? And what questions they shouldn't ask?
So there is always an opportunity in every interview where they ask you, do you have any questions for us? And I think a lot of people take notes throughout their interview, and I don't know if that's advisable. The best way to do it is to pay attention throughout the interview. When they're talking about stuff, make mental notes. Don't have a notepad, but make mental notes and remember to go back to them at the end. Like if they mention, oh, we have a state-of-the-art dental simulation lab, go back to that and talk about it. You could scour the websites also. So there are 2 or 3 ways to do it. Look at the website, see if anything jumps out at you. Like, for example, Penn has a global health externship program that they're very proud of. So when I was looking through the Penn Dental website, I was like, oh, global externship? That sounds cool. I'm going to ask them about that. Yeah. It doesn't matter if the website explains it thoroughly. Pick a topic and ask them about it because they want to boast about their school. And that's what I noticed in a lot of dental schools that I interviewed at. It was their chance to show off to me.
Yeah, that is very true. Like, for example, at UCSF, they would tell me that, we have the state-of-the-art DenSim lab. And I'm like, yeah, it's really nice. Like, when was it built? And, how was that, and how did that happen? Something like that, or something that you don't find online. You can always bring into like them to ask. Let's say you know about the DenSim lab, but you don't know much about it. So ask them questions about it, Exactly. So my rule of thumb is if something is not in their website, that would be a good question. But if something is in their website and you ask it, that's a terrible question because you should already know it before you go into the interview.
See, I disagree with that because you'd be surprised by how many people don't know their own websites. How many schools, they haven't looked through their website. So if something's on the website, like the Penn Global Externship Program is explained very well on the website. But if you ask someone about it, they'll go on and on because that's what Penn is proud of. You know that, for example, Pittsburgh and Penn are big research schools. Right. So there's always these stock questions that you can ask them. Like, oh, how is this in terms of research? Howard is a big community service school. So just figure out what's important to that school's philosophy and ask them one question about that. In fact, you can actually go in and ask. So what is the philosophy of this school? What do you view as the most important thing? Or what is a point of pride for Penn, for example? What is it that Pittsburgh takes pride in and sets it apart from all the other dental schools? This is
Yeah,
you giving them an opportunity to sell to you. You're not coming off as arrogant, you're coming off as genuinely interested, but suddenly the roles have reversed, the power dynamic has shifted, and suddenly they're trying to sell you their school. They want you as an interviewer, they want to give you a reason to come. So you can always do that switcheroo.
that's awesome. So let's jump ship and go into post-interview. How do
Okay.
you send a thank you note and how do you follow up with the interviewer?
This is a pretty key aspect actually of interviews. You always want to send a written post-interview thank you note in the mail. These days, everything is going towards email. But like I said, dentistry is very conservative. So unless you're applying to one of those schools that is environmentally conscious and would think that paper is a waste. And there are some schools who do think that, so do your research beforehand. But for most traditional dental schools, a handwritten thank you note posted is the best. So I would recommend getting a stack of thank you notes. I would recommend making a mental note of all the people you met or all the people you deemed important during your day trip and follow up with them. In the same vein, in the follow-up thank you notes, get as many phone numbers of dental students as you can to start building that network.
Right, that's a good advice. And what do you do if you had a bad interview?
It depends how bad of an interview it was. But if you come out of it feeling like you weren't your best self or you were too anxious or what kind of bad interview are you thinking?
So let's say, like in EMDNJ, I had this was my first interview, and when I went there, I was like sleep deprived and didn't get a chance to eat breakfast or like really hungry. So I came across as very weak and could not even answer the questions with focused eyes. Like I was not focused in the interview, so I had to explain that to him, the interviewer, later in a post, and it did very well. Like I explained that yes, this was not the best day, and this is some of the things that I've done. I thought you'd enjoy this.
Right, exactly. You can always follow up on something that the two of you found interesting at the same time. Like, oh, remember how we talked about growing implants or how endo is going towards placing implants? Here's a cool article I found in the American Dental Association journal. What do you think? This is what I found in the JETA, And you can always send things like that. The way you share GIFs with your friends, it's the same. It's exactly the same as making friends. Like, oh, I thought you would find this to be interesting. It was great interviewing with you. And never ever acknowledge that it wasn't a good interview for you, because then you're drawing their attention to that thing. So you might have thought your palms were too sweaty when you shook hands, for example, or something like that, but they probably didn't even notice. That was all in your head because that's something
Right.
that you think you have a problem with. So never bring attention to anything negative, because chances are they either didn't notice or they don't remember and don't care.
That's cool.
So
All right.
positive, say thank
Yeah,
you.
so say something positive and say thank you and relate to them in some way. Sending
Exactly.
articles, sending things that you've done, past project, etc. The final question for this interview. How do you strategically network with dental students, adcoms, professors after your interview? I know that you talked about taking phone numbers as much as possible. How do you follow up with them?
This is going to sound drastic and modern because it does not apply to other industries. This doesn't apply to corporate. This doesn't apply to defense government things. But in dentistry, you will find that a lot of people in today's day and age, despite being conservative, despite it being a traditional profession, they will text. So if you take a phone number, text them the next day. Text them an article, text them a thank you, text them to meet up for drinks, text them about that new restaurant that opened up down the block, text them when you're in town, text them if it's 4th of July. So keep texting people and trying to meet up in the real world when you're going through their city, or when something cool is happening, or if something that, if someone's into art and there's an impressionist gallery going on, text them about it. If someone was in the Army Navy, text them about the Army Navy football game. Like, find out what's important to them and text them about interests that that they will like.
And do it systematically, because you might have a list of contacts, let's say 500 people, and it gets hard to manage that list. So you just have to be very systematic about saving those numbers, knowing who are in what school, and just be very good at just connecting with them, understanding their needs. Yeah.
Sorry, so here's my confession. You brought this up. It's an excellent point. Be good about saving their numbers. I am terrible with names sometimes, and I know a lot of people with the same name. So what I do is, in front of them, like for doctors and dentists, I have a whole row of like doctors, obviously. So whenever it's a doctor, you always put Dr. so and so. And that way it's already setting it apart from other people. So if you're looking for someone who's a colleague or a doctor, you're going to go to the D in your phone and you're going to find all of them.
Yeah.
I always also put an identifying feature next to it. So if it's like Dr. Steve Albelda, UPenn, you want to put Dr. Joseph Newell, Temple. So you want to put like something in front of them, or Dr. Rick Wilson, Dental Spa, things like that. So that next time, 2 years down, you get a text message or you get a phone call, you know exactly who it is, and you're not like, Rick, who Rick? Which Rick is this? Is
so
a
lot of people have the same first name.
That's my method.
Yeah, that's awesome that you mentioned that. I also have like a spreadsheet of people that I know, and these days everyone is on LinkedIn. Basically, you can save their professional connection by that. You can reach out to them via LinkedIn. Sometimes they list their Gmail address or other email provider address, so you can always connect with them. Just mention who you are, how did you meet, and just then throw out something that might be useful to them.
Exactly. All right. Well, this has been great.
Thank you so much, Mariam, for coming here and do the interview with Dental School Coach. And right now we have a special announcement. Mariam will be joining Dental School Coach as a co-founder of this blog, and she'll be contributing from time to time when she has time. And she's a busy dentist. She'll make time for the future dental student, and definitely she'll connect with you. Is there a way to connect with you, Mariam? What's the best way to connect with you?
So I'm going to put my email address on there, and I'll also put my personal number for people who are getting coached by me, so they can reach out to me. But my email is open to everyone. They can send me whatever questions. Or also, if you have questions, you can go on Student Doctor Network, and we have Dental School Coach as a user over there.
Yeah.
We post things about how to study for the DAT, how to prepare for interviews, what to wear the day of the interview, specific questions that different schools ask. Like BU has a different question list, and Penn has a different one, NYU has a different one.
Right.
So all of that stuff, you can reach out to Student Doctor Network, you can PM me over there, you can email me, you can put it on the blog.
That's awesome.
Subscribe.
All right. Thank you so much again, and wish you all the best in your application process. Looking forward to doing more videos, more collaborations with Mariam and more other dental students. And until then, take care.
All right, take care. Thanks a lot, Mohammed.
Yep.